With my hair finally grown back in, I figured I would pick up where I left off and try to become a movie star. Frank Zappa had a different plan for me. Frank's band at the time was the best in the music business with Terry Bozzio and Patrick O'Hearn. Warren Cucurullo was also playing guitar. Warren had showed up at a Frank show sometime earlier. He would show up at every Zappa show he could at the time. Warren looked like a hippie with extra long hair the first time I saw him. We all became close friends after working on Joe's Garage together a couple years before. That tied us all together. I did love Terry. I loved him a lot. I loved the music. I loved everything about Terry. He is the greatest drummer in the world. I loved him with a childlike passion. I was a little girl, infatuated. He taught me a lot of things. He taught me music. I absorbed it like a sponge. I once said to him, "What are you going to do when you have a nothing left to teach me?" He didn't have an answer. It's interesting what a blow to the head can do. They say a severe head trauma changes your life depending on where you get hit. After the fall from the window, I could just go to a piano and play, even though I had no training. Terry asked, "How do you know how to play piano like that?" I told him, "I don't know how. I just did it." The fall changed me. Zappa would ask, "How can you hear and count that when you don't even know how to read or write music?" I didn't have an answer. I just found it in my head and did it. People that fall on their head change. I sure got courageous. For fun, Terry, Warren, and I started writing songs, or trying to. The three of us sat down on the floor and started writing. My songwriting came from poetry. My poetry came from the pain. My mother's disappearing act years earlier still stayed with me. I delved into my innermost emotions and poured my heart into the pen. We went through my books of poems and picked out words and phrases to use in songs. I wrote "I Like Boys" first. It went on from there. Warren and I put that pre-demo together first. We recorded it quick and then played it for Terry. He said, "This is you guys? This is awesome." He added his drums from there. He liked it because it reminded him of the Pretenders and the way Chrissie Hynde was talk singing. We assembled a few other songs and recorded them on the boombox. Frank was putting an updated state-of-the-art studio in his home. He called it the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen. One day when we were all hanging around, he turned to us and said, "I'm going away for a few days for Halloween. Why don't the three of you go into the studio and put a demo together?" Really, Frank? No one had used the new studio and the new equipment yet, not even him. He then suggested we go down the street to his friend Ken Scott's place and tell him Frank wanted him to work with us. Ken was a well-respected music producer. I asked him, "Should we go right now, Frank?" He said, "Yeah, right now." Frank was always casual, but casual or not, when he said something, you did it. I took Ken Scott's address and headed out the door. Terry and Warren followed. The three of us piled into my and Terry's Datsun B210 with white pinstriping on the sides and a hatchback for the drums. We drove down the street to this address Frank had given us. We parked out front. Warren and Terry asked me, "What are you doing?" I told them, "I'm taking the boombox with the tape in it. Then I'm going to climb over the fence into Ken's backyard and find him." One of them asked, "Why don't you just go in the front door?" I told them, "No." Frank said he was going to be by the pool getting a suntan. So I'm going to the pool. I'll be right back. There I was dressed in black leather clothes carrying this giant boombox with my platinum blonde hair teased up wild. I climbed over the fence and there was Ken Scott getting a tan by the pool. I said, "Excuse me. Hello, Ken?" He jumped up out of his deck chair, grabbing his towel. He was startled for sure. He looked at me and asked, "What are you doing in my yard?" I told him, I climbed over the fence because I knew you would be by the pool getting a tan. Frank Zappa sent me over. Frank Zappa sent you over? Ken asked skeptically, followed by, well then, what are you doing here? I told him, I'm here to play you this music. My music. I can press play right now. And Frank said if you like what you hear in these songs, you can come in Frank's brand new studio with the Kurzweil keyboard with me tomorrow. With Terry Bozzio, who is in the band, and you can produce our demo. We will christen the studio. He paused for a minute and then said, okay, hit play. On the tape were our rough versions of I Like Boys, Destination Unknown, Mental Hopscotch, and a cover of The Doors. Hello, I Love You. After he heard them each one time, he said, stop it. And a long pause followed, after which he asked, what time tomorrow? The next morning at Frank's house at 7885 Woodrow Wilson Drive in his brand new studios, we recorded our demo for free. It was just the four of us, Terry, Warren, and me with Ken Scott. A few days later, Frank came back from his trip and we all met up in the studio, excited and nervous to play Frank, our maker, what we had created. The first song he heard was Mental Hopscotch. He listened to the full song demo the whole way through. Then he shut it off and said, I like it. Mental Hopscotch is my favorite song. Now go to work. Work. We made a demo, so I thought it was time to party. I was ready for some cocaine and cognac. It was time to celebrate. I was so fucking wrong. It was time to work. That was the start of my whole life. Frank told us, now you three put a band together. Call yourselves the Cute Persons. Terry, Warren, and I looked at each other and quietly said, oh dear, the Cute Persons. Okay, Frank. We left Frank's house later that day full of hope. There was just one problem, the name. Cute Persons? We couldn't be the Cute Persons. Warren and Terry started talking and one of them said, we shouldn't be the Cute Persons. We should be the Missing Persons because we are the people missing from Frank's band. That was it. Missing Persons was born. We pressed up the EP ourselves and started selling them at shows. We also sent it out to radio stations across the country in hopes we would get noticed. KROQ in Los Angeles was important to breaking bands at the time. Terry, Warren, and I drove there one day hoping to get the on-air DJ, Richard Blade, to give it a spin. We could have just walked in the front door and asked to meet him. That would have been the traditional way to do things. But as you may know from what you have read of me and learned of me so far in this book, I am not a traditional person. Rather than march into the lobby, I went around back and climbed up the fire escape while Terry and Warren waited outside our car. As I had a few years earlier when I met Frank, there I was again in heels, scaling the side of a building on a rickety old metal fire escape. At the top, I saw an open window and climbed through right outside the KROQ studio. There, outside the DJ booth where Richard was doing his radio show, I started banging on the door, yelling, Richard, let me in. Let me in. He didn't know me or know how I was suddenly outside his booth. I put my EP record in front of myself. The cover was of me in a bikini. All Richard saw was this black leather-clad body with a record for a face. He started laughing and opened the door. He asked, how did you get up here? I told him I had climbed the fire escape. He invited me into the studio, and I pulled the record away from my face and handed it to him. He said, is this you? Your Missing Persons? I said, yes, I'm Dale. Will you please play my record, play Mental Hopscotch? He does somewhere to I will play it right now. Have a seat. And he played it right then and there. That was the beginning of it all. I went out the front door and met Terry and Warren in the back, and we all jumped into the B2 10 Datsun and drove away. After that, KROQ started playing Mental Hopscotch all the time. The listeners liked it. In short order, it became number one on the station. We sat around listening to KR Rock's end of the year countdown on the same boombox we had brought to Ken Scott's house. I had made pasta and we had wine and a bottle of champagne. Patrick O'Hearn would slice the garlic finely with a razor blade. So very old school. As they counted down and didn't mention us, I thought, we won't be cracking this champagne. They got to the top 10. No mention. Romeo Void was number 8. They got to the top 3 and still no mention. By the time they got to the top 2, I was about to shut the radio off. Terry said, no, wait. The DJ said, we will be right back with the number 1 song. I was in tears. We were not even on the top 10 list. They came back from commercial and said, the number 1 song of 1980 is Mental Hopscotch. I started crying. We all looked at each other. We did it. We did it. The song was also a number 1 hit on WWLIR in New York and number 1 on Boston's WBCN. Other stations around the country played it as well. Once the radio station started playing our songs, people in record companies started to notice. We sold 10,000 copies of that EP. Capitol Records liked the EP and signed us. They reissued the EP, replacing Hello, I Love You with a new Missing Persons original, Words. It went on to sell 250,000 copies. The cover art was from a promotional photo shoot I did with a photographer and clothing designer who said I could use the photos for publicity. Little did I know that photo would trigger a legal battle. It was just me in a bathing suit. Strangely, the artist who made the piece of clothing I wore didn't call it a bathing suit. He called it something like Blue Number 4. The artist sued me because he said I called it a bathing suit, and that was mislabeling his work of art called Blue Number 4, or whatever he called it. He sued me, but he lost. The details are in the Harvard Book of Law as the case Poe v's Missing Persons.